I was hearing a bit about the Palworld situation, so I'm curious to see what Legendary Drops has to say about this whole thing. So here we go.
Can't believe I have to do this. You would think that one of the most popular games in the last decade, a game that has broken sales records, that has become the second most played game in Steam history twice now.
Yeah, I played a bit of Palworld when it first came out, and it was actually very cozy fun. So I'm actually wondering if I should play but is this called a 2.0? So I'm quite curious, like if you guys would like me to play the Palworld now, let me know if you like me to play that in the comment section.
Still averaging higher player counts than the vast majority of live service games, even some of those live service games combined. That is still in the top 10 most played games on Steam right now, even a month later.
I love his console setup.
You would think that that would be the most widely discussed and widely celebrated game in the games industry, but it's not. That's right. Nobody has reviewed it. They happily covered the controversies, the lawsuit, the plagiarism accusations, all the drama surrounding the game. They had absolutely no problem with putting a permanent number attached to the game in early access, but they immediately fell silent the minute that this game finally made it to full release. And it's because they're embarrassed. They're afraid of what this game means, and they have no idea why it's successful. Something that I think is honestly pretty obvious.
And Nintendo does not like any sort of competition that could possibly threaten them. And yeah, you know, makes sense.
When you look at it, because we have an industry that has become so cynical with these $70 games that are adorned with microtransactions.
Nobody wants to pay $70 for a video game.
Serious Hollywood wannabe games that are out there, and a lot of game critics that wish that they were movie critics in a lot of cases. And a game,
I remember back in the day when SpongeBob cost like $50 for a video game, and even back then I thought that was too much. But yeah, it's really sad that the game prices are just going higher and higher, and the same with the new consoles. They're becoming like $1,000, and even rumored to become $2,000.
That is priced in a way that basically anybody can afford, that's made in a way that anybody can play, and it's filling a void that AAA has left open for years. And I don't think people can stand it. So today, I'm going to do something that I have not done in a very long time. I'm going to review Palworld because nobody else wanted to. The industry didn't want to. So I'm going to be talking about why one of the most popular games in the past decade is not being discussed. I'm going to talk about my experience playing the game with over 300 hours of experience playing it, and why so many people just don't seem to understand why it works. It's now been a month since Palworld reached 1.0, and a month later, it is still one of the top 3 most played games on Steam, regularly peaking at over 400,000 concurrent players on Steam. According to Analea Analytics, Palworld has now sold more than 30 million copies worldwide
tremendously.
And generated over $700 million in revenue, despite being developed.
Yeah, you go on Twitch right now, you will see like 10 different people in my following list just straight up playing Palworld. That's how big it is.
Less than $7 million by a relatively unknown studio from Japan with amateur developers. The closest comparisons from the past decade.
Yeah, usually usually the amateur developers, they tend to put out a lot of bangers.
Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, and Hogwarts Legacy. 4 of the biggest, most successful, and most widely discussed games in the industry. So you would think that Palworld would be one of the most heavily covered games in existence. I mean, this is a genuine rags to riches story, an unknown studio that just made one of the biggest games of all time for practically peanuts, but it isn't. I didn't really notice this until I was streaming the other week, and I had realized that I hadn't seen.
I really like games that are very beginner friendly, that is not too overstimulating for like people who aren't typically not gamers. Still like easy enough for like, you know, non-gamers to play.
Seen anybody that was posting reviews for the finished game, so I went and looked, and sure enough, it appears like games media is just flat out refusing to review Palworld. A month after release, it only has
Or not
13 great reviews
non-gamers,
on
but like
Metacritic, with only IGN
very
and
casual.
VGC being the only two major outlets that bothered to cover it. OpenCritic has 30 reviews, but only 9 of them are actually from 2026. The rest are from 2024. Nearly every major outlet was willing to review this game and score Palworld during its early access when it was unfinished, but almost none of them returned to update those scores when this game finally reached 1.0.
Don't know
I just want
why.
to point out the absolute hypocrisy here. Notice how quickly these guys are to play favorites. When Bungie asked them to hold off their marathon reviews until more content was added, they waited and came back with glowing reviews. But when it comes to an unknown studio like Pocket Pair, they had no problem immediately handing an unfinished game a permanent score and never walking back. These people
Lame.
had absolutely no issue with covering the lawsuit with Nintendo, accusing the game of plagiarism, or losing their minds over the fact that Pocket Pair's CEO expressed any optimism over the potential uses of AI in game development. They spent 2 years dragging Palworld's name through the mud, but when it finally came time to evaluate the finished product, suddenly nobody could be bothered. And now you could say, oh, it's only been a month, maybe the reviews are coming. Okay, that's fine. So tell me exactly why Halo Campaign Evolved has 51 reviews when it released only a week ago. Tell me why Beast of Reincarnation has 67 reviews and it released only 2 days ago. This isn't a lack of time. It's AAA favoritism mixed with a media ecosystem that does not want to walk back what they had already said about Palworld. They sold this game down the river. They didn't want it to succeed. And now that it has, reviewing it honestly would require these guys to admit that they were wrong or reveal that they just
It just
aren't
shows
like
they never
us.
needed them.
And they don't like that we like something that they don't. And I'm
Yeah,
not the one
basically.
saying that. These guys said it themselves. Now, because they refuse to move.
Yeah, social justice warrior game journalists, I guess. Is it that really? I don't know.
Forward, I figured I'd go back to the past to meet them myself. And back in 2024, Chris Tapsell at Eurogamer had published an article titled, "Is Palworld actually any good? Of course not." Where he had wrote, "It's difficult to know where to begin with games like this. How do you break it down into its constituent problems?"
This gives me the same vibes as IGN, who gave that BS score for the Mouse PI. They just gave it like a mid score because they didn't like the cheese jokes. Like, nothing to do with the gameplay or like the aesthetic and the mechanics or whatever. It has nothing to do with any of that. They just didn't like the humor in it. That's the same vibe I'm getting with this.
When they're eclipsed by its very nature as a cynical, precision reverse-engineered machine designed to bottle your attention and refine it into concentrated cash. He then went on to quote Pocket Pair CEO Takuro Mizobe, apparently as proof that Palworld is nothing more than a cynical cash grab, where Mizobe had said, "I have a deep-rooted desire for my work to be enjoyed by as many people as possible, and to that end, if there are any good ideas out in the world, I pick them up, and I don't think that I need to be particular about originality. I want to make something less serious, or rather more easygoing. I think it's good to create something that way, like jumping on what's trendy." Oh no, how horrible. A CEO that's paying attention to what players enjoy, refusing to take games too seriously and trying to make something that's going to appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah, and guess what? It worked.
An absolute tragedy. How could anybody possibly see this as a bad thing? Especially the way that he worded things. Well, that's probably because the same writer that is criticizing Palworld is also the person that later ended up reviewing Mixtape and gave it a glowing review, telling readers
why
to
am I not
ignore what other
surprised?
people are saying online about it. And honestly, I don't think that there is a more damning example of just how disconnected they are.
Yes,
Media can sit around and they can endlessly find value in a game with zero
very
gameplay,
disconnected.
some theater kid level art project that's funded by the daughter of the richest man in the world, but they somehow cannot understand why millions of ordinary players would rather spend their time with something like Palworld. Tapsell will then go on to write, sorry, I gotta use the right voice for this. "The real problem with Palworld is less the derivative approach than its total shamelessness. It might be oddly refreshing to be so open about your cynicism, but it also has an impact on the player. Play Palworld and you won't feel like you're playing something that was made with thought or craft or an earnest team's best intentions. You won't feel admiration or wonder. You won't feel any real sense of achievement. You won't feel like any artist was involved or anything meaningful might come to mind. You will instead feel like you're playing a product designed to be sold rather than played. You'll feel like a mark, and you'll be right." Damn, I totally nailed that, by the way. I got to get a job in voice acting. I covered this back when Palworld had first launched, but I don't think that I fully appreciated just how pretentious some of these writers are, or just how far they are willing to reach to misrepresent this game and try to shut it down. Of course, someone like this ended up loving Mixtape. It is the perfect game for writers that want to play art critic inside of an industry that is built around entertaining people. But as I said back then, and I'll say it again, you caught me. He was right. I did feel marked. I, along with apparently 30 million other people, felt like this game was aimed directly at me and injected straight into my bloodstream. What games media missed then and still refuse to reckon with now is that Palworld became this successful because it is a complete inversion of modern games and the modern games industry and every single thing that these writers want video games to become. This game does not take itself seriously. These developers don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
Palworld technically has a story. I don't even know what it is, and I don't even care. This is a brain-off, fun-built game that is completely around the idea of just letting you play it. I mean, it doesn't even tutorialize itself or force you into hours of exposition and dialogue just so these game writers can try to pontificate and indulge themselves like they're going to be the next Kojima or that they're writing the next Lord of the Rings. It's a game that just, it lets you play. In hindsight, it is just so funny to hear these people try to intellectualize a game like Palworld. It takes the friendly creature collector formula with the cutesy creatures that lets you force them into working in sweatshops. You can capture other trainers and balls and force them to work too. You can hand a monkey an AK-47, shove a penguin into a rocket launcher, and send an entire flock of self-destructing birds directly into your enemies. I mean, by the end of this game, you are basically a Gundam. You're firing a grenade launcher into packs of adorable creatures, shooting lasers across the battlefield, and using an array of drones to eviscerate multi-dimensional gods. None of it makes sense, and none of it has to. You don't need to intellectualize fun or what's interesting. Nobody needed an essay about the artistic...
I don't think you need a deep... You don't have to have a deep lore for every video game you make. Just, just enjoy something as is. You don't have to make everything make sense. Just turn your brain off and go have fun.
Intent trying to understand why a pixelated plumber was trying to throw fireballs and jump on turtles and why that was entertaining for people. You played it, it felt...
Yeah, no one questions the Italian plumber throwing fireballs. They just accepted it. Or a blue hedgehog that eats chili dogs and fights an old fat man trying to beat it for the Chaos Emeralds. Like, no one asked, like, the origin of the Chaos Emeralds. They just enjoyed the moment.
Good. And you just wanted to keep playing it. That's why Mario is one of the most popular games in existence. This constant need to intellectualize everything is part of why the games industry is decayed into this self-serious Hollywood wannabe machine that's just wasting so
don't be a part of the Hollywood machine.
So much time. Palworld, in all of its stupidity and absurdity, it just feels like a return to normalcy. And players recognize that, and they connected with that. And I think that's the reason why so many of these people just never came back to review it. It's because they were just completely wrong about Palworld. It's a game that validates basically everything against what these guys want the industry to mean. It was made for a broad audience. It borrowed ideas that people already liked, that they knew people already liked. They prioritized gameplay over prestige, immediate fun over artistic self-importance, and they gave players an absurd amount of freedom without stopping every 10 minutes to explain why any of it was meaningful. To this writer, that is proof of cynicism, which is just absolutely embarrassing. Wanting as many people to...
Yeah, no one wants to sit through a 10-minute cutscene to get to the next action part.
Enjoy your game? Actually cynical. Paying attention to the most popular ideas and what people like? Actually cynical. Designing something that people can lose hundreds of hours in and only charge them $30 for it? Surprising enough, yes, that's actually also cynical. And that actually might be the most revealing part of this entire article, and honestly all the industry's coverage over this game, because this isn't contempt for Palworld. It's contempt for the audience that enjoyed it. Because if 30 million people play something and we all enjoy it, and your only explanation is that they were manipulated into liking it, you aren't trying to understand those people. You've already decided that their taste is beneath you. I was half tempted to title this video, Palworld is a Wake-Up Call Part 2, because that's exactly how special this game is. A throwback to a series that I used to do. Maybe I'll do again someday, maybe not. But That's really what this game is, at least in my eyes. And I think one of the reasons why Palworld is not being reviewed right now, I don't think it
Yeah, I think the lawsuit with Nintendo was definitely a wake up call. Uh, and after it was over, yeah, Palworld just decided to go out for blood.
has anything to do with how long the game is or how stacked the release schedule is for how many games that are coming out. I think part of it's favoritism, but I think the other part of it is that it simply just makes a lot of people in games media, a lot of people in the industry, very uncomfortable because not understanding it, not understanding why people enjoy it, not being able to enjoy it yourself is a bit of a rude awakening to realize that the games industry might be headed in the wrong direction and has been for a really long time. And it also kind of goes to prove just how far disconnected you have become from the audience. Again, keep in mind the active development for this game was $7 million for them to get to early access, probably less than $20 million for these guys to get to full release. And I don't know how these guys can quantify it because they're looking at it. There's like no long exposition. It's not a high piece of art. It doesn't have a star-studded voice cast or anything like that. I'm sure this game has some executives' heads spinning right now because these guys are looking at it and they're saying, I just spent $300 to $400 million making this blockbuster game, and this game just ran laps around me multiple times by now. And they're like, how do you do this? How does something like this even happen? Most of these guys don't even have the ability to even make a game like this anymore because they fired those people a long time ago and replaced them with people that probably think the exact same way as many of these games journalists do right now. They probably have
Yeah.
the exact same opinions, which says a lot about the games that we're seeing. It also makes a hell of a lot more sense when you think about it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the real reason I was motivated to make this video wasn't just to criticize games journalists. I can do that all week, to be honest with you. What it is that I am sick and tired of these video game outlets going out and giving a score and reviewing early access games never to return to them. I just don't think that it's fair. And while in some cases they do go back, in other cases, like with Palworld, they don't. If that game does not align with them specifically, if that game does not meet up with their standards of what they think the games industry should be, if that game's audience is their internet enemy of the week, they have absolutely no problem judging that game for what it was when it first came out into early access and never returning to it. And I don't think that that's fair. So if nobody else wants to seriously review Palworld, I will. I should probably preface this by saying that open world survival crafting games or anything that's adjacent to this genre, funny enough, is actually my specialty. They're not only the games that I tend to enjoy the most, but they're also the games that I've put the most time into. I've nearly 1,000 hours in Terraria, probably around the exact same for Minecraft. Hundreds of hours across Satisfactory, Valheim, Enshrouded, Core Keeper, Stardew Valley. Honestly, the list kind of goes on. V Rising, whatever else. I've already played most of them at this point. And now with
Well, that makes sense because a lot of my friends and mutuals play those similar games. And no wonder this game took off, and not only in my space, but like, a lot of most of the internet.
more than 300 hours into Palworld, I don't know, man. I just
Ooh.
can't put this game down. It isn't perfect by any means, but a lot of its rough edges honestly just become a part of its personality. And after playing as many survival games as I have over the years and putting in as many hours as I have, I genuinely think that Palworld is not only going to go down as one of my favorite games in the genre, but honestly one of my favorite games ever. This game, it just feels so good to play, and I cannot overstate how much that matters to me with almost every single game that I play. The controls are so tight, the movement feels responsive, the weapons feel good, and the commanding, mounting, or directly using your pals it's almost always satisfying. I recently played a bit of Game Freak's Beast of Reincarnation. God, is that game terrible. And the camera was just so janky in that game. The movement was so uneven. Bouncing from platform to platform just felt so wonky. And the animations were just so poorly timed. It reminded me just how quickly all those small problems can just start ruining an experience.
I remember this one Pokemon game. Was it Diamond and Pearl? It was one of those that many Pokemon gamers, they complained about it being so janky and the graphics were so terrible. Yeah, it's either that, or was it like the newest Pokemon game for the Switch 2 that had really bad graphics that uh Pokemon fans complained about. But I remember it was one of those, and yeah, they really complained about how bad the graphics were. That's really, really bad.
Experience for me and just make me just not care about it. Palworld's tight controls directly lead into basically everything that you're feeling and learning about the game, and that's kind of what just opens it up for everything else. Like, that's why this stuff matters so much to me. I remember in the beginning of the game I had caught a Tantrus pretty early on, and I spent hours using its slingshot to just snap myself across the map. It was so fun learning how to be able to mess with the physics that way. I was reaching places that I probably had no business going to and
That looked
progressing way
fun, jumping
faster
on
than
a
I was
giant
probably
beetle.
supposed to. And
Or
man,
jumping around with
that
a
just
giant
feels
beetle.
really good. Palworld is filled with moments like that. You try something, you're immediately rewarded for it, and then suddenly you're off chasing the next creature, material, upgrade, quest, or stupid idea that you can come
Yeah,
up
you're gonna
with. And
feel
I
good
think a
being
lot of modern
rewarded.
games get this wrong, and it's part of why so many of these games either fail or just become completely forgettable. These guys are constantly getting in their own way. They are stacking up these tiny annoyances, bad controls, lack of
That you
freedom.
do something, you get rewarded, and you get a dopamine boost. Makes a positive game interaction.
Things that interrupt you with unnecessary pauses like dialogue or whatever else, or they're gating progression so heavily that you feel forced to play exactly how these developers intended instead of how you actually want to play. And a lot of that comes from ego and unskilled developers. The developers
I don't
become
mind
so attached
dialogue
to
as
how the
long as
game is
I'm like
supposed to play from
still
their
doing
experience
something.
that they forget to just let you experience it yourself. And Palworld, it just isn't that kind of game. That philosophy extends across almost everything and ultimately makes this game better. It doesn't get in its own way of fun, and it's, I don't know, man. It just doesn't really take itself that seriously. Pocket Pair seems to have spent most of their time just building the things you would actually want to interact with, the things that actually make the game enjoyable, instead of just wasting your time polishing details that barely even matter to most people.
Yeah,
I mean, they didn't even bother giving
yeah, I tell you. Okay, so like I'm gonna use Holioverse for an example. Like after you go through a story arc, I guess for some fans they still remember all the details of that story arc. But after you go through one or two new arcs after that, are you gonna really remember the past arc that you spent so many hours reading the dialogue from? Are you really gonna remember, like, you know, remember remember it that much? Like the casual player, most likely not. They just want to, you know, play the next story arc and just be in the moment.
any of the creatures a proper death animation. They just turn into giant ragdoll balloons, immediately bouncing across the ground and rolling down a hill. Some writers have criticized Palworld for being rough around the edges and unfinished in some places, but honestly, a lot of those rough edges are exactly what are giving this game a lot of its personality. There are parts of this game that Pocket Pair either didn't know how to do something the conventional way or simply didn't care, and weirdly enough, sometimes it just makes the game better. The questing, I think, is a perfect example of this. They barely even tried to make it integral to the progression or to the game itself. The main quests are there to be able to point you in the direction that you need to
What's
go if
that?
you actually need the guidance, but you can basically ignore them
Is there
entirely,
falling
wander
damage in
off
this
into the
game?
world, and still naturally progress through the entire game from start to finish. And man, do I love that, because instead of following quest markers the entire game, I was just exploring. I never needed to feel like I needed to do anything else. I just picked a direction, and then every new area would give me a new reason to keep going, whether it was new creatures, a boss to fight, materials, dungeons, resources, or honestly just a completely different environment to be able to explore. So somehow they made a quest system that works for both the people that need direction while also at the
Ooh,
exact same time being completely invisible to the people that don't. The creature diversity
where is
goes
that player
way deeper
going?
than I had expected, probably deeper than a lot of people have even scratched the surface of yet. Their abilities, passive traits, their work suitability, the different partner skills that create this insane number of combinations and ways for you to be able to experiment with the game. Some pals can craft, gather, farm, breed, and automate something at your base. Others support very extremely specific combat builds that I haven't even seen yet. Again, I am so mad about how this game was framed by the media, especially for calling it cynical, when this is honestly one of the deepest and most complex creature collectors that I have ever played. I mean, you could have one pal just be your damage carry and then just surround it with creatures that boost its abilities, or you could run 4 Gobfins with Vanguard and then you just make yourself the damage dealer. For a while, I had built around Flarical's ability to be able to cause explosions after enemies were set on fire, dealing extra damage and also still setting them on fire. I then paired that with Renjishi, so then I could inflict burn myself with my own weapons, Kelpsy Ignis to increase all fire damage, and then Jormuntide Ignis to boost damage against burning enemies. Once I had that all together, dude, stuff just started melting. I can't actually wait to be able to put even more into some of this build, but I haven't even seen stuff like this yet. I think it's awesome how much this game actually supports that experimentation. It rarely locks you into just doing one thing. You don't even have to keep a flying pal on your team because they have the air jumps, and you can also build double jump builds for mounts that are just on the ground. You don't even have to basically even use your pals.
I've seen
for
so many
fighting if you don't
voiceover
want to.
clips
You can
based
build
on the
around
scene.
them, you could fight alongside them, or you could just practically ignore it altogether. I mean, I've even watched somebody beat the entire game just using swords and no pals at all. That's what I really like about it. This game hands you systems, and it's asking you what you want to do with it instead of telling you this is the correct way to play. That freedom is basically the name of the game pretty much across the board at this point. The boss fights were another massive surprise for me, especially the later tower and raid bosses. I expected giant health bars and all-out brawls, and while some of that stuff definitely is still there, and you can totally just kind of bully your way through a lot of this stuff, the game does start to introduce actual mechanics. Panthalos could raise a massive tsunami that you either had to fly over or get swept away by. It had other AoEs and other abilities that you had to watch out for. Other bosses would cover the ground in patterns, so you had to actually watch your positioning. Every single time I thought that I understood Palworld's limits, this game would just throw another curveball at me. Every single system would lead to another system. Every time I thought that I'd reached the bottom of something, I just found another layer. Palworld feels endless to me because there's always another creature, build, machine, strategy, or completely ridiculous idea that's waiting for me. And it honestly made this game impossible to put down. It's just so damn fun to play. But that doesn't mean that the game is without flaws. Now, for as good as Palworld is and how good the controls actually feel, the collision geometry is still an absolute mess. I get caught on something that I can't even see. I fail to be able to step over an object that's barely over ankle height. Or sometimes I'll get caught climbing on invisible walls and then get stuck on those as well. The camera can also break and kind of lose itself in certain fights or getting hit by specific attacks, leaving me just kind of staring into the ground or fighting to see what's actually happening. Now, none of this stuff is game-breaking, but I'm going to tell you what, it is really frustrating. And after a while, it does start pulling you out of the experience.
What is this whale made of?
A little bit. Pocket Pair might still be a small studio, and this definitely actually isn't their first game, but after all the money that they've made making Palworld, I think it's fair to be able to expect
7.5 minutes to beat this thing.
Get cleaned up. Now, my biggest issue with the game, honestly, really my only issue with the game, the camera stuff is more of an annoyance, but honestly, the end game, especially the world tree, is just obnoxious to me. I love the area itself, don't get me wrong. I love the variety of taking the larger world and then compressing it into this smaller, more dense map. The creature selection is really great. The boss fights are a lot of fun, and the modified Pal Gauntlet is actually one of my favorite encounters in the game outside of like Panthalos in the final fight. But the progression in this area is honestly just lame. I don't know what these guys were thinking here. You spend a lot of time just nuking creatures for salvage parts, then feeding those parts into a machine, and then hoping RNG is going to give you what you need. And at the exact same time, you're constantly farming to craft AI cores just to make basic upgrades to get into the final tier. And for such a great looking area, there just isn't enough meaningful stuff to do here. You don't really get to use it all that much. Raid bosses, hard mode, and the end game stuff in general is just really my biggest problem with the game. Eventually, you stop leveling. You don't really need to catch 5 of every new pal anymore because it's not really worthwhile, not unless you're trying to breed. Exploration then loses its purpose. You don't really need to go looking for anything else. Progression stalls out, and the only real path forward that you have is endless min-max breeding to chase the perfect passives and stats while mindlessly farming the exact same areas, hoping for schematics to drop so you can get duplicates of them to make better armor. Worse than anything else, progression stalls out. The only real path forward that you have is endless min-max breeding to chase the
that looked like Lucario for a second.
Mindlessly farming the exact same areas, hoping for schematics to drop so you can get duplicates of them to make better armor. Worse than that, the freedom that I love throughout the rest of the game starts disappearing. And this is probably the part that really annoys me the most. I go from using creatures that I like to building around whatever strategy can actually survive the absurd health and damage of a lot of these creatures. Now, I don't mind the hardest content in the entire game requiring preparation or optimized teams or a little bit of grinding. It should have some of that stuff, but I wish it leaned a little bit more on skill, positioning, mechanics, and smart team building instead of just brute force stat checks. And that's where I land with Palworld. It's flawed, sometimes janky, and the end game loses some of the freedom that makes the rest of the game and the rest
Players
of the
don't care.
experience feel
They
so
like
special.
it.
But Pocket Pair still has some work to do, work that I still think that they're going to do. And honestly, none of that changes what this game gets right. It trusts me to be able to find my own fun. It gives me a world full of systems, creatures, weapons, and ways to be able to play. The game
Yeah, see, Palworld gets what Dragon Ball didn't. Like, you don't let your enemy keep powering up. You interrupt it before it gets to its final form.
It's out of its own way and just lets me decide what I want to do while I'm playing it. And I think that's what the media missed here. And it's really sad that they did. They were so focused on what Palworld represented to them, where its ideas it came from and what kind of people enjoyed it, that they never seriously engaged with why the game worked. Popularity doesn't automatically make something good, and Palworld deserves honest criticism, but it also deserved an honest review. Beneath all the controversy is a game that understands something that the rest of the industry has increasingly forgotten. Sometimes people just want to play. Sometimes people just want to have fun. And after more than 300 hours, I still don't want to stop. I love this game, man. I really do. There's just something special about it. And while I've listed a bunch of things that I really liked about the game, there's also some like intangible stuff that I can't really explain that keeps me coming back to it. Part of it's just the game's personality. It's the way the creatures look. It's how they, just turn into rolling balls when they die. It's just the some of the unfinished stuff or some of the crude humor or whatever it might be. It just keeps me coming back to it. And, another part of it is that the game just largely just laughs in the face of modern game design. And I love that so much. And I wish that more people in the games industry would put themselves aside and just look at the game a little bit more thoroughly and give the game more of a shot, because they could probably learn a lot from it. I think the games industry needs to move in the direction of games like Palworld and go back to just worrying about being fun and not really worrying about what other people think.
And put your players first.
But the only thing that really keeps me from saying that Palworld is like my favorite game of the genre, or could be my favorite game of the genre, is that it doesn't really have that much replayability. At least I'm not seeing it having that much, not unless I played it with other people or something like that. A game like Terraria, the reason why I keep coming back to it year after year after, I'm literally going to be playing it right after I finish this video. The reason I keep coming back to it is because every single time I play it, it feels dramatically different every time I do. And it's because there's different builds that you can take, and those builds require a lot of dedication to be able to get all the pieces for and progress all the way through. A lot of things require, I don't know, it's hard to explain in a video. If you know in a lot of cases. But Palworld doesn't really have that because you're not really locked to building around certain creatures. You're not locked to building around certain gear and presets and stuff like that. And that's really good. It gives you a lot of freedom to be able to do whatever you want, but it also takes away some of the feel of being able to, have a different progression path when you go to play it a second time. It's a game that you're going to come back to play if you're going to be playing with other people, or if they add more content, and chances are with Palworld, they're going to be definitely adding more content. If I had to say there was anything that I wish I could see in the future,
I think Palworld has,
I definitely think it needs evolutions or fusions.
Open world, I think.
Like whether they do the traditional, evolutions,
like you can play with your
like
friends,
Digimon or Pokemon or something like that. I want to see some visual progression of my pals in the game, and that visual, like, show of power is really cool, and it's one of the most attractive parts of those games, and I hope that ends up coming to this game. And with the creature designs that they already have and how ridiculous they kind of get with some of this stuff, I definitely kind of feel like fusions is the best way for them to be able to go, and you could really get some cool stuff going on with that. But I said this again in like the media breakdown part of it and my media take with it, but I think like one of the things that really upsets me with this game is the fact that it just did not get a fair shake. And it goes to show just how unfairly some of these games can be treated by the wider industry. And it really worries me for indie studios, and it really worries me for early access games, because while these guys will sometimes go back to change their scores with some games, we've already seen that they don't want to do it with others. And if those games do not align with them or their goals or their narrative or whatever it is, they're not going to give it a fair shake. So I think it's incredibly important that you guys support the games that you love.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to Little Guy. We made this one impossible to ignore. That might not be true for the next
You don't
one.
need game journalists to validate your games.
Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. we are actually almost at 500,000 subscribers, which
Nice.
I don't want to go on some long tirade. I might just make a video talking about it or something like that. It's absolutely insane. I don't think that I deserve it. I don't understand why people watch me. I'm like, I just turn on the camera and start talking some days, and people watch it. I don't get. I mean, thanks. I really appreciate it. I really love the support, man. I can't really explain it. It's a weird thing. I'll tell you that right now. It's definitely not where I expected my life to go, but I'm grateful. That's all I can say. So
Very
cheers
cool.
to 500K. I guess I'll make a video talking about it when it actually happens. And thank you guys for everything. Follow me on Twitch.
Thank you for the video.
I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. Peace.
Family.
Yeah, very good video. Appreciate that. But yeah, that was such a wild ride. And honestly, I'm very happy that Palworld got the recognition and support it deserves. But yeah, we need more games like Palworld. Mostly we need game developers that are like the team that works behind Palworld. People that put the people first and don't worry about these game journalists that put their opinions over the players. But yeah, you know, he said it best. Yeah, that's the direction we need to go to. Yeah. That's it. That's all I have to say about that.